At the party, my boyfriend shouted, "She's with me because she knows and no one else would want her. She's my backup plan. She cleans, pays, and doesn't complain." When I tried to leave, he gently pushed me back onto the couch and said, "Sit. Show them I'm your only option." His friends burst out laughing. That night, I slept in the car. Today, I have 19 missed calls from his mom and one message. Please, just hear him out once. If someone had told me that morning that I would end up sleeping in my car that night, I probably would have laughed. That's how life with Marcos worked. Everything looked normal on the surface, like a calm lake hiding dangerous currents underneath. I glanced at the mirror one last time. The black dress he had picked out for me fit my body perfectly. Marcos always said he had good taste in dressing me, though he would inevitably add that it was the least he could do, considering my imperfections. 3 years together, and I still hadn't gotten used to his comments. But I had learned to smile, pretending they were just jokes. My phone buzzed. A message from him: "Don't be late. And remember to smile. I don't want my friends thinking I'm stuck with a sourpuss." I sighed. The past few months had been especially tense. Marcos had lost out on a promotion, and somehow his frustration always managed to find its way to me. But it was just a rough patch, I kept telling myself. Everyone goes through hard times. My mom always said real love requires patience. A knot tightened in my stomach, warning me something was off. I ignored it like always. I applied one last layer of red lipstick, his favorite color, and left the apartment we had shared for the past year. A year in which, little by little, I had lost my space, my friends, even the sound of my own voice. Julio's apartment, Marcos's best friend, was in the most exclusive part of town. One of those places that practically screamed money from every corner. I immediately felt out of place as soon as I walked in, just like I always did around Marcos's friends. They were a tight-knit group from college. I was the outsider who never truly belonged. Look who finally showed up, the girlfriend. Rafael, the most obnoxious one of the group, lifted his glass of whiskey as if he were toasting my arrival. "We thought you left her at home, Marcos," Julio added with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Marcos grabbed my waist, his fingers pressing a little harder than necessary. "See? Told you she'd be late," he whispered in my ear, his breath already heavy with alcohol. "We've all been here for over an hour." "I'm sorry, traffic was awful." I apologized, even though I had left with plenty of time. The night went by like so many others, me standing next to Marcos while he laughed too loudly and drank too fast with his friends. Every time I tried to join a conversation, I could feel his eyes on me, judging every word. "Your girlfriend's really quiet tonight," Julio's wife commented at some point, a woman who seemed just as uncomfortable as I was around that group. "She's always like that," Marcos answered before I could say anything. "She struggles to socialize. That's why I have to drag her everywhere, otherwise she'd never leave the house." I felt my cheeks burn with shame. I wanted to speak up, to explain that before him, I had a wide circle of friends. Friends I had slowly abandoned because he didn't like them. But I stayed silent. Just like always. At some point, Marcos mentioned his mom, using that same contemptuous tone he reserved for her. "She's at it again, trying to tell me how to live my life," he complained. I had never understood why their relationship was so tense. His mom had always seemed kind to me, even though lately, Marcos had forbidden me from seeing her. As the night wore on, the drinks kept coming, and Marcos's voice grew louder and louder. I saw that glassy look in his eyes, that look I had learned to fear. It was after midnight when it happened. Someone brought up long-term relationships, and suddenly all eyes were on us. 3 years, huh? Julio asked. "That's a long time. What's your secret, Marcos?" I saw the smile creep onto his lips before the words even left his mouth. That smile that never reached his eyes, the one that always meant something cruel was coming. "The secret?" Marcos raised his glass, swaying slightly. "There is no secret. She's with me because she knows and no one else would want her. She's my backup plan. She cleans, she pays, and she doesn't complain." It felt like the air was sucked out of my lungs. The noise of the party turned into a distant buzz. Everyone's eyes burned into my skin. Without thinking, I stood up. My legs were shaking so badly I had to steady myself on the arm of the couch. "I'm leaving," I mumbled, more to myself than to anyone else. But Marcos was faster. He placed his hand on my shoulder and gently pushed me back down onto the couch. "Stay," he said, in that tone that was half command, half plea. "Show them I'm your only option." His friends burst out laughing as if he had just told the funniest joke of the night. As if my humiliation was the entertainment they had been waiting for. I froze, paralyzed by shame. Suddenly, I remembered another party, 6 months ago, when Marcos had joked in front of everyone that I didn't contribute enough financially. Back then, I had convinced myself it was just work stress, that he didn't really mean it. I always found an excuse for him. But this time was different. As their laughter echoed in my ears, something inside me finally broke. I waited. I waited for everyone to get distracted enough, for Marcos to get lost in another round of drinks and stories about his brilliant career. It was during a heated argument about politics that I managed to slip toward the door. No one noticed me leave. No one except Julio's wife, who gave me a look I can only describe as a mix of compassion and relief, like she was thinking, finally, she woke up. The cold early morning air hit my face as I ran toward my car. My hands were trembling so badly it took me 3 tries to fit the key into the lock. Once inside, I locked all the doors and sat there, frozen, breathing heavily as tears streamed down my cheeks, washing away the makeup I had worked so hard to put on. My phone buzzed in my purse. It was him. "Where the hell are you?" Followed immediately by, "I'm sorry, I drank too much. Please come back." And then, "If you're not back in 10 minutes, forget about getting into the apartment tonight." I turned off my phone. I couldn't take another message, another round of manipulation. I started the car and drove to a public parking lot a few blocks away, far enough to feel safe but not so far that I'd get lost in an unfamiliar part of town. I reclined the seat as far as it would go and curled up under my coat. The cold seeped in through the poorly sealed windows, but I would rather freeze there than go back to that party, back to that humiliation. My mind swung between rage and fear. Was I overreacting? Was what he said really that terrible? Maybe tomorrow it would all seem like nothing, and I'd end up apologizing to him, again, like I always did. But something had shifted. As I stared at the distant city lights through the fogged windshield, I felt a strange kind of clarity. It was the longest night of my life, but also the first in a long time where I could think clearly. Morning found me with swollen eyes and a numb body. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror, smeared makeup, tangled hair, a wrinkled black dress. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. I turned my phone back on, and the flood began. 27 messages from Marcos, each one more desperate and aggressive than the last. "You can't do this to me. Do you realize what you've caused? You're so ungrateful after everything I've done for you. Come back right now or you'll regret it." Mixed in with, "I'm so sorry, I don't know what came over me. I love you, please come back. I'm worried about you." There were also messages from his friends. "Rafael, Marcos is heartbroken. Stop being dramatic and come back. Julio, you crossed the line. He was just joking." As I read, flashes of the past 3 years flooded my mind. Marcos, suggesting, I stopped seeing my best friend because she was a bad influence. Marcos checking my expenses and questioning every purchase. Marcos belittling my opinions in front of others. Marcos telling me I was lucky to be with someone like him. I remembered the first time he made me feel small. We were at a restaurant celebrating my birthday, and I accidentally spilled a glass of wine. Instead of helping me, he just sat there, staring at me with disgust, and said, "This is what happens when you try to act like something you're not." The next day he gave me an expensive dress, and I was so grateful I forgot about the humiliation. My phone rang. It was Lisa, my former best friend, the one Marcos had convinced me to distance myself from. "Are you okay?" Her voice was full of concern, as if the months of distance had never existed. "Not really," I replied, surprised by my own honesty. "I need a place to shower and think. Come home. Right now." Among the unread messages, one name stood out: 7 missed calls from Marcos's mother. She never called me. Marcos had always made sure we barely spoke, claiming she had never accepted our relationship. I ignored the calls and drove to Lisa's house. The hot water from the shower washed away not just the grime of the night but also some of the mental fog that had clung to me for years. Lisa lent me clean clothes and made coffee while I told her everything. She didn't look surprised, only deeply sad. "I tried to warn you so many times," she said, her voice breaking. "But he was always there, controlling every conversation. And when I finally had a chance to talk to you alone, it was too late. You had already pulled away." Sitting in her kitchen, holding a cup of coffee between my hands, I felt safe for the first time in what felt like forever. Then I remembered something important. I need to check our joint account. Lisa handed me her laptop. I logged into the bank and felt my stomach drop. The account was empty. The $3,000 we had saved, money I had mostly contributed, was gone, drained overnight. "He did it so you'd have no choice but to go back," Lisa said, looking over my shoulder at the screen. "He knows without that money, you'll be in trouble." She was right. My paycheck wouldn't come for another 2 weeks, and my personal account barely had enough to get me through a few days. My phone buzzed again. It was Marcos's mother. This time I noticed something I hadn't before: 19 missed calls from her. 19 desperate attempts to reach me, all at different times throughout the night. And now, a voicemail. "Please, just hear him out once." Lisa caught the change in my expression. "What's wrong?" "Marcos's mom has been trying to contact me all night," I said, a shiver running down my spine. "She never does that." "Maybe you should listen to her," Lisa suggested. "She might know something important." With my heart pounding, I played the voicemail. Her voice was shaking, broken by sobs. "Elena, I know we haven't spoken in a long time, and that's my fault. There's something you need to know, something I've kept hidden for too long. You're not the first. There have been others before you, and I'm afraid for you. Don't go back to him. Please, I need to see you. There are things I have to show you." My hand trembled as I pulled the phone away from my ear. Others before me? What was she talking about? What did she say? Lisa asked, alarmed by the look on my face. "I think there's a lot more to this story than I ever imagined," I said, my throat tight. I had no idea that call would change everything I thought I knew about him. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. I picked a table in the far corner, somewhere no one could overhear our conversation. Marcos's mother, Carmen, walked in 5 minutes later. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair messy, nothing like the elegant woman I remembered. "Thank you for coming," she said as she sat across from me. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Neither was I admitted. "What did you want to tell me?" Carmen opened her purse and pulled out a tablet. Her hands trembled slightly. "First, I need you to know I've been a coward for years," she began, her voice cracking with emotion. "I convinced myself it wasn't my place to interfere, that it was just relationship drama, that maybe the other girls were exaggerating." "The other girls?" I asked, though I already knew what she meant. "There were 3 before you," she said, sliding the tablet toward me. "Look at this." What I saw took my breath away. Screenshots of messages. Photos of a girl with her arm in a sling. Police reports for harassment. Restraining orders. And then, social media posts. Marcos presenting each girlfriend as the one, using nearly the same exact words he'd used with me. "Patricia was the first," Carmen explained, pointing to a photo of a blonde girl. "They were together for 2 years. Marcos isolated her, convinced her no one else would want her. He humiliated her in public so many times I lost count. When she finally left him, he stalked her for months." She moved to another photo, a dark-haired girl with sad eyes. "Lucia. 18 months. Same pattern. Except this time." Carmen inhaled deeply. "This time there was physical violence. She pressed charges, but later dropped them. He's always been very persuasive." The third photo showed a woman older than me, with a confident smile that didn't match the desperate messages she had sent Carmen afterward. "Every time I tried to talk to him, he pushed me further out of his life," Carmen continued. "I convinced myself maybe he had changed with you. That this time was different. Until a few days ago when I showed up at his apartment unannounced, and I heard him talking to you on the phone. I recognized the tone, the words. What I saw on his phone made me realize you weren't the first. But you could be the last. Why are you telling me all this now? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Because I'm afraid it's too late to fix what I let happen, she said, tears filling her eyes. And because this morning, when he called me saying you'd overreacted and ran off, he said something that chilled me to the bone. She'll come back. She has nowhere else to go. I made sure of it. The plan was simple. Lisa and 2 of her friends would go with me to the apartment to gather my things once we knew Marcos wasn't home. Carmen would text him, asking him to come to her place urgently due to a plumbing issue. Everything went according to plan, until I was packing the last of my belongings and the door suddenly burst open. Marcos stood there, furious. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he shouted, storming toward me. Lisa and her friends stepped between us, but he ignored them. "This is pathetic, Elena," he said, his tone suddenly turning condescending. "One little misunderstanding and you put on this whole show? You know you can't leave." "I already did," I replied, surprisingly calm. "This is just me taking what belongs to me." "And where will you go?" he scoffed. "With what money? You really think anyone else would put up with you like I have?" I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd saved, his voice threatening me in one of the many messages he sent that night. "I have plenty more of this," I said. "And I also have this." I showed him the screenshots Carmen had given me. His face changed instantly, from arrogance to fear, then to a rage deeper than I'd ever seen before. "My own mother," he muttered. "I always knew she'd betray me. And you?" He took a step closer. "You're nothing without me. Nothing." "You're wrong," I said, feeling each word like a release. "For the first time since I met you, I see exactly who you are. And I finally see who I am too." Justice came in ways I never expected. It wasn't a dramatic lawsuit or an epic confrontation. It was a simple post online, screenshots of selected messages and a sincere account of what I had lived. I mentioned his exes without revealing their identities and invited them to share their stories if they felt ready. The response was overwhelming. 2 of them reached out. Patricia even publicly shared her own story. Marcos's so-called friends began to distance themselves, especially once their wives and girlfriends gave them ultimatums. Rafael texted me, "I had no idea. I'm sorry." Julio went further. He called to apologize personally and told me his company had canceled a major contract with Marcos's firm after the story went public. A month later, as I unpacked boxes in my new apartment, tiny but mine, I received a letter from the university where I studied part-time. I had been awarded a full scholarship to complete my degree, thanks to a professor who had read my story. Carmen invited me out for coffee. She told me Marcos was in therapy, finally facing his demons. I felt nothing hearing that. No anger. No satisfaction. Just a calm indifference that let me know I had truly moved on. That night, I sat down and wrote a blog post I had been meaning to write for weeks. To anyone reading this who feels trapped, the cruelest words are the ones said with a smile. The silence of those who watch hurts just as much as the words of the one who abuses. But there is life afterward. There is light. There's a path back to yourself that's worth walking. Sometimes, you have to lose everything to finally find yourself again. And remember, the sweetest revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. It's rebuilding yourself. Sometimes, sleeping in your car for a night is the first step toward waking up to a life you truly deserve. If this story touched you or you see yourself in any part of it, we invite you to join our community at Story Confessions, where we share real-life experiences that can help others. Don't forget to like this video so it can reach more people who need to hear this message, and leave a comment to share your thoughts or similar stories. Your voice gives power to these experiences and helps bring visibility to situations far more common than we think. Thank you for staying with us until the end.